I'd like to call the Butte-Silver Bowl Council of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, August 16th, 2023 to order. Clerk, can we please have roll call?
12 present, 0 absent.
12 present, 0 absent. Next, we'll move to the Commissioner Sorich. Commissioner Sorich, could you please lead us?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, fellow commissioners. Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which shall greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bowl. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll move to the approval of the minutes of August 2nd, 2023 regular meeting. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to approve the minutes from the August 2nd, 2023 regular meeting.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there anything on the question? Can commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
Yea, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. We don't have any items that are not addressed on tonight's agenda, so we'll move on to the Chief Executive's report. I think this is a good way to lead this, the Chief Executive's report off. Today I was sent a little saying from an old coach, and it says, "The cost of being in leadership position that we must accept when we run for taking administrative positions. 1, you must have you have to make hard decisions that negatively affect people that you care about. 2, you'll be disliked no matter what your best attempt is to do the best for the majority. 3, you'll be misunderstood and won't always get the opportunity to defend yourself." And I think that there's been a lot of this going around lately, and so kind of wanted to put that out there because these positions are hard and there's a lot of different opinions of the way things are interpreted or what people's thoughts are on different items. I also wanted to bring note to, I hope that everybody had a chance to take a look at the article in the Missoulian that Dan Bucks, former director of the Montana Department of Revenue, wrote and kind of explaining taxes and how the state has put us in a position that is putting the tax burden on our property tax, our local homeowners. And so if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I will send a link out to everybody. We put it up on the website, but it explains things extremely well. So I invite you all to take a look at it because it might help you explain some of the things that have been passed along there, is passing the buck along to the local taxpayers and what we're trying to do. And tonight, as we are looking at moving forward with the budget, how we're trying to mitigate those damages as well. So, and then I'd like to address a large item that's going to be on tonight's agenda a little bit. There's been a lot of conversation and topic going back and forth and discussions about it, and I think there's some misunderstanding. I think that in one of the things that I struggle with is a communication was sent in, it was under Commissioner Fisher, but the letter that was sent in, nobody seems to know who authored the letter, and it wasn't signed. And so I was confused by that, and we've talked to people about how that came about and where it was, but I want to address some of the points in there, if I could, and how some of these things are probably unattainable or able for us to do within these points. First one, deviations from the consent agreement and commitments. I don't think that is a point of order. This is the Chief Executive's report, and I have the ability to report. Go ahead. County Attorney Joyce, Commissioner Shea, County Attorney Joyce.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Shea, I think the Chief Executive could talk about this if the matter is segregated, and maybe that's a better place for him to do so. If it isn't segregated, the recommendation is to refer it to the Committee of the Whole, and so he could talk about it next week when it will be discussed if it isn't segregated.
County Attorney Joyce, thank you for that interpretation. I do want to say that I did discuss this with Chairman Frederickson, and he asked me actually to talk through these points ahead of time, and we talked about should I wait for it to be segregated. So I look forward to somebody segregating this so I can talk through the points that are there. And so this wasn't an off-the-cuff deal. We did talk about it with the chairman, but I will move forward with this. This is going to be a long meeting tonight. I know that there is, and I think there's going to be a lot of emotion around this, but I look forward to addressing some of the points that are going to come out of that. You know, as we say, there's a lot of emotion around different issues in here, and so I will close the public, or the chair, the chief executive's report tonight so that we can get moving and move on to public comment on any item on the agenda tonight. Please state your name, your address, and what you'll be speaking on. And I want to remind everybody, we have a clock up here and we're going to limit everybody to 3 minutes. So thank you for that. There's a button there that you'll be able to see. It'll turn red. There you go.
Mr. Chief Executive, you moved so fast, you glossed right over anybody that wanted to make comments over things that are not on the agenda, and I wanted to do that. Could I take my moment here to talk about an item not on the agenda?
That is at the end of the agenda. So we have a time at the end of for items that are not on the agenda tonight. Is it not listed?
I believe it's right at the beginning.
Oh, no, those are things for us to do. So when you want to talk about something that's not, the public comment on the items not on the agenda, that's at the end of the meeting.
It is? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I misunderstood your agenda.
Okay, thank you. So if anyone would like to come forward to speak on any item on the agenda tonight, please come forward, state your name, your address, and the item that you'll be speaking on to us tonight.
Mr. Chief Executive, members of the Commission, Tom Manschreck. My business address is 420 West Main Street in Boise, Idaho. I'm here to speak on item number 28, the request by the Aspen apartment community to ask Butte-Silver to submit an application to Montana Department of Commerce for $750,000 to finish the renovation that we started in 2017. With me tonight are my partner, Ravonda Stordahl, Executive Director of the Public Housing Authority and Beautiful Affordable Housing, and Evelyn Camp, who's a Development Associate in our office. I've been in this room a lot of times over the years, and Aspen Place apartments were constructed in 1999 and 2002. We sold in 2006 to the proverbial Southern California developer who thought they would do a better job than we did running the properties. In 2017, the Public Housing Authority and Thomas Development bought those properties back and voluntarily extended both the period of income and rent affordability and voluntarily reduced the rents below those allowed by Montana Department of Commerce. We did a very thorough and responsible renovation utilizing Markovich construction. As is sometimes the case, we ran a little short on money. The windows need to be replaced. Montana Department of Housing in their annual inspections has asked us to do so. We have reached out to Ms. Burns and her staff, and this seems to be an excellent use for CDBG money. We are committing to continue the period of affordability for, good grief, Ravonda, 35 years, something like that. So the apartment community will remain affordable for Butte-Silver, low and moderate income families. The replacement of windows will also serve to decrease energy costs, and at this apartment community, residents pay for their own space heat. So happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
during this part where it's public comment, we can't have them ask you questions. Thank you. Thank you. Please state your name, address, and the item you'll speak on.
My name is Joe Griffin. I live at 1121 West Diamond. I'm here to talk about item 29. Jim Fisher, Commissioner, District 6, requesting a resolution to be considered for expressing the policy of Butte-Silver regarding consent decree commitments, communication, and public transparency. I was very involved with the consent decree, starting as the project manager for DEQ for Butte Priority Soils, and working on actually the original record of decision. And I started working on the consent decree in right after the consent. I started working on the consent decree right after the record of decision was issued in 2006. I retired from DEQ in 2015, but continued to work on it during all that time, including I worked with a number of commissioners. Some of them I see that are still here. I offered field trips, and I wrote many memos to this commission. I also stated I thought it was one of the biggest decisions probably ever before this commission, roughly hundreds of millions of dollars at stake. And I think this resolution is ill-founded. It seems to be based on an assumption that there's been a deviation from the CD. There has not been. I assume that it has to do with what's commonly called the gray area material. I've read the statement of work attached to the CD left and right and up and down, and it is very clear that it states that material can be used. I would appeal to you to respect the work that this commission put in making this very monumental decision. I respect this body immensely, but I would also ask you to respect EPA. I would ask you to respect DEQ. I would ask you to respect ARCO as well. And bottom line, I would ask you to respect the staff that works on this. You have probably the finest staff money could ever buy. They are very dedicated. They work their butts off, and they understand the process and the program very well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin.
Mr. Chief Executive, members of the commission, my name is Chris Fisk. For the record, I also wish to speak on number 29 in reference to individuals and conditions that have occurred with your consent decree related to the Butte cleanup site. I too, sir, have taken field trips with our children for 30 years. I've taken my children to historical sites, and in fact, we visited some of these cleanup sites as well as the water remediation with it. I wish to stand and speak in negation of that consent decree. And when we talk about that, we're going to drop back in history about 30 years. Okay? I do not believe how that has come out, and I do not believe the numbers we are watching. I cannot look at my students, my former students, and people that I know in local government and try to justify them a threshold of 200 for lead and turn around and say it's okay to have 1,200 in Butte. That's not ridiculous. That's barbaric. Not only that, some of the people advising that commission didn't even have the medical training to do it. We stood here and sat here May 1st in a public meeting. I asked 8 questions. Simple. Who got the contracts? Where have they used gray fill? How do you justify lead levels? What is your future, and how are we going to open communications? That's our biggest problem here, guys. It's not us. It's not Butte. It's not you as commissioners that have given your time to represent the people and the children of this community. Wrong is wrong. Whether you get a phone call back or not, you cannot justify those numbers, period. And if I'm lying like Rupert Murdoch and Fox, they lied about voting boxes. And they got sued, $700 million. Got a message for ARCO, NBP, and the EPA, and everyone else who has, by chance, helped this go through. If I'm lying, sue me. You can't, because I'm not. And that should be a concern to you. Not the past 130 years of mining. It's what they're going to do with it from here on out. And we do not have clear messages. And the messages that we are getting are mixed, and they're not good. It's one thing to represent people. It's another to put up a front to save money and protect jobs. And when you hurt Butte citizens and kids, you've stepped over the line.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you,
tonight.
sir.
Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioners, my name's Beck Ringsock. I live at 3310 Hannibal Street, Butte, Montana, and I want to speak on item 29, if I may. And we've got 30 years of secret meetings that have gone on, and when the consent decree was finally signed in 2020, that gag order that was put on by Judge Hatton back in 2002 went away. Since that time, we're still having secret meetings, and you know, I know a lot of people say they're not secret. If you don't tell anybody when and where a meeting's happening and how they can attend or see it, then that's a secret meeting. And CTEC, which is paid for by EPA as the representative to keep this community informed on what is happening with the Superfund site, is working for the EPA and it's working for DEQ, but it is not working for the citizens of Butte, Montana. And the thing that's in the CD that really bothers me, that is the whole reason I think that we must do this resolution and put some handcuffs and some borders on what's going on here, is this gray dirt issue. And they talk about gray dirt. In the consent decree, it lists the 6 contaminants that have to be reviewed for remediation: arsenic, candium, copper, lead, mercury, and zinc. And it says if these contaminants exceed any one of the lists below, then the material must be considered tailings, waste, or contaminated soil. But there's an out in here. It says 3 of the 6 must not meet the standard. If it's only 2 of the 6 that don't meet the standard, they can use that as on-site fill, and they've been doing it. And I don't know if you saw the pictures of that park in Deer Lodge, Montana, the Stone Arrow Park, that 30 years ago was done, turned over to the county and said this will last forever. And they've got signs up all over it saying, caution, don't enter arsenic coming up to the surface. Arsenic's 200 milligram limits in this, and some of the property around here it's 600 and 800. But under these rules, if they're used to decide what's used to clean this town up, then in 30 years it's going to look just like Arrow Park does. And the single most important thing we've got to understand is EPA has a mission to defend the community and keep it clean and safe. And they have not been doing that. I think what's occurred is called regulatory capture, where they're more interested in keeping the cost of the project as low as possible for the benefit of the people paying for the project. And that's the first objective they have, and the last objective they had is looking out for the future of the kids in this town. And so I would urge you all, get a hold of the consent decree and look at just these 6 contaminants. Candium will kill you. Copper and lead will give you cancer. Look at the rates. And this stuff is in the
Thank you,
on-site
Mr.
material
Ringsack.
they use.
Thank you.
Mr. Chief Executive and council members. My name is Fritz Daly, and I live at 100 East Broadway Street at the Finland Hotel in Butte. I too want to speak a little bit on, I guess, number 29 in your agenda. I make these remarks that I'm going to make as your friend and not as your enemy, as some folks have categorized me. I come here just as a concerned citizen. I think the most important thing I can say to you tonight concerning that agenda is, and that item is that, and I've said this many, many times to many, many people. I've said it here many times. The decisions that are being made today on the Berkeley Pit and Silver Bow Creek, the Montana Pole site, and the Butte Hill, they're forever decisions, and they have forever consequences. It's important that we make them right. It's really important that we do things right. And no matter how far you go down a bad road, which I believe we have done with Superfund and Butte, no matter how far you go down a bad road, you can always turn around. You can always turn around. And a couple of people that spoke before me mentioned how long they've been involved. I've been involved in this thing for over 40 years. 40 years, that's how long I've been involved. Since that time, there's been 10 presidents of the United States. There's been 7 governors. There's been 8 chief executives. That's how long I've been involved. And I only come here tonight because I care. That's the only reason I come here. I don't come here for any other reason. I just care. I've been involved and I just care. Again, you know, I think and I believe that the restoration of Silver Bow Creek and the cleanup of the Berkeley Pit and all the rest of it, like I said, are forever decisions, and we really need to make sure that we do things right. And Butte just deserves better. We deserve better. We deserve better for what we've done to make this country the great country that it is today. There's no question about that. Over 2,500 people, over 2,500 men have died fighting for us and for what we deserve as a community. 35% of the copper that was used in the war effort came from Butte, Montana. And I know that I'm probably getting close to my time, but one thing you need to remember is that the British Petroleum Company is 100% responsible for this cleanup. Okay, I was in the legislature when they closed the smelter. I was in the legislature when they closed the Berkeley Pit. I was in the legislature when they shut the pumps off that caused the Berkeley Pit flooding and the mine flooding. I was there. They closed the Berkeley Pit in 1982.
Thank you, Mr. Daly.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate it.
It's kind of strange that we would be having a discussion on transparency and folks like me get cut off. It's not right. I can just tell you that. It's not right that I get cut off. Because
Thank you, Mr. Daly.
I have something I wanted to say, and
Thank you.
you guys are making a mistake not letting people talk. I
Thank
can
you,
tell
Mr.
that.
Daly.
It's wrong.
Do we have any other public comment on any item on the agenda tonight?
Hi there, John McKee, 2714 Edwards. I'm here also to speak on item 29, and I just want to give it from my experience on BNRC, the Butte Natural Resources Damage Council, that you guys have had me serve on for the last 12 years, I think now. You know, the thing that we're really comfortable with saying on the BNRC is that we've come completely transparent from day one. Every meeting we've had has been public. Every study we've had done, the results have been made public. And as a result, I know I feel it, I don't know if it's true, but I feel that people feel that what we've done at BNRC gives us the sort of most respected cleanup group that's done anything in Butte so far. And it's because we were always open. And so I want to give you a perspective. I think people here asking for this to go through, the transparency option here that Butte-Silver Bow wants to put into place here, no one, I hope no one here, is suggesting that anyone who labored on the CD or all the hard work that was done, or they're still doing right now, have done anything wrong. They're just asking for transparency because that allows them to build back a trust that I think a lot of the community has lost. So I hope that that perspective means something to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKee. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak on any item on the agenda tonight?
Mr. Chairman and members of the council, my name is Evan Barrett. I live at 807 West Silver. I wanted to speak briefly on item number 29. I'm less concerned about who produced this document than what's in it. And what in it is an attempt to set some policy surrounding EPA-related Superfund activity by Butte-Silver. And so it's a policy prescription, if you will. You, as a council of commissioners, under our charter, are the policy body of Butte-Silver. You're the ones who set policy. This is an attempt to put some policy possibilities in front of you on an extraordinarily important issue. I've looked at the 7 bullets on here, and it really looks like there's about 8 of them within there, and a lot of them have merit and should be considered, because it is nothing but helpful if the citizens can understand and the people working at Butte-Silver can understand. Here's some parameters we have to operate on. Here's what our elected representatives said. This is what we ought to stay within these boundaries as we work with people who are, I believe, constantly trying to go outside the boundaries. I've worked hard, very hard, on public meetings with EPA. And by the way, I want to compliment Chief Executive J.P. Gallagher for the strong support he's given with my efforts to get the meetings open and getting the state of Montana to fall behind Butte-Silver on calling for open meetings. So open meetings are part of this policy stuff. Adhering to a principle that cleaner is better than dirty when we do the cleanup. Seems to me like that's a pretty good thing. There's stuff in here which I don't dive into too much, but it's about trying to avoid conflicts of interest or perceptions of conflicts. Because remember, we're in the political arena and perception is reality. What the people think is very important. There are a couple things very much wrong with this in my mind relative to the charter. There are 2 elements here that have staff reporting to the Council of Commissioners. Our charter says the staff works for the Chief Executive. So if you want the staff to report to the Chief Executive and concurrently with you, that's fine. But let me just say that I think this should be moved over to the committee of the whole. And I think real effort should be put in to try to shape this thing into meaningful policy that can benefit Butte-Silver and it can benefit the citizens of the community.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Do we have anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak on an item on the agenda tonight?
Edward Banner, 2601 Grand Avenue, Butte, Montana. I rise to a point of order and a clarification. Are you going to open up the hearing on the budget as item 1 for public comment?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to come forward, speak on any item on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, no more. Then we're going to move forward to the item that we were talking about. Section 1, bid openings, public hearings, and/or presentations. Our first one is communication number 2023-379 to Nick Gleason, Finance and Budget Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization to schedule a public hearing for the adoption of fiscal year 2024 final budget and establish the user rates for Metro Sewer System, stormwater system, solid waste disposal, and collection, and lighting and fire hydrant districts. The public hearing will begin on August 9th and continue until the Council of Commissioners set a date to adopt the fiscal year 2024 budget and fix the rates and levies. Director Gleason.
Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioners, Danette Gleason, Finance and Budget Director. I have passed out to you tonight a balanced resource and requirement sheet. That's the first 5 or 6 page document. That shows that all the funds of the local government have been balanced and reconciled. Also before you, I've passed out an amendment sheet with some additional amendments. Most of the amendments before you relate to balancing our funds, particularly the grant funds, several within the health department. We've also just got news recently this week that the Greenway Service District received an additional $29,000 from DEQ for some fencing. So that's been added, that grant's been added, as well as the Community Development Department received $10,000 from the Richard King Mellon Foundation to assist in the creation of the website and to highlight Butte-Silver Bow's recreational activities. That $10,000 and grant funds have been also added within this budget. We did a little bit of change in the stormwater budget to balance it, and we had to shift some staffing and some supplies around there in the stormwater budget, mainly to balance that fund out. But for the most part, the amendments before you are just balancing grant funds within the budget. Last week presented to you was the budget, which still remains at the $174 million. There's been no change or updates on certified values. They're holding as what was distributed to us. So we are still requesting to set the budget at 302 mils. I am requesting the Council of Commissioners will close this public hearing. I've worked with Chairman Frederickson and Chief Executive Gallagher to set a special meeting for Tuesday, August 22nd at 5:30 for adoption of this budget. At that time, we should be able to give you some additional information on some of the other district mills as well.
Thank you, Director Gleason. Is there any questions from commissioners? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing. First, I'll call for proponents. First call for proponents.
Of adding an additional item to the agenda. I'm here just in case you didn't read my email, to read it into the records. You can pull it up. Most honorable members of the Butte-Silver Bowl Council of Commissioners. Alma Higgins planted and maintained Butte's finest in-city garden park for over 30 years. The garden park was dedicated as an Alma Higgins Garden Memorial Garden on June 24th, 1962, to honor and celebrate the memory of the spirit of her contribution to the beautification of Butte, of Montana, and of our nation. Today, the Alma Higgins Memorial Garden is located on Butte-Silver Bowl city-county property and seems to be totally neglected, except for every once in a while they'll whack a few weeds. Butte is a city with a great heritage. This woman, this garden is an important part of that heritage and of Montana's heritage, and her legacy deserves to be treated better than to be neglected. I would hope that all of you, members of the council, would be willing to vote unanimously to request the Butte-Silver Bowl Parks and Rec Department to consider including a line item in this year's Butte-Silver Bowl Parks and Rec budget to restore the property, to restore the monument properly, and maintain it in the future. Should it not be possible for them to do that at this time and stage in the budget process, I would hope that this council would vote unanimously to include a line item in this year's Butte-Silver Bowl Parks and Rec budget to restore and properly maintain the memorial. We need to be building on her legacy, not neglecting it. Respectfully submitted for your consideration and action.
Thank you, Mr. Bonderup. So next I'll call second call for proponents. Third call for proponents. Seeing none, next I'll call for opponents. First call for opponents. Second call for opponents. Third and final call for opponents. This will keep the public hearing open, is that correct? And we'll refer to the, oh, we close it, okay. Is that correct? Okay. I'll close the public hearing. Next we'll move to committee of the whole. Okay. So do we make a motion?
Not for public hearing.
Okay. All right. Section 2, consent agenda. A, 1 through 4, and B, 1 through 29. Do we have any friendly amendments and or segregations? Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I would like to segregate 28, Communication 2023-435.
That's item number 28, Communication 2023-435. Any other segregations? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive. I would like to segregate communication number 29, 2023-436. Thank you.
Item 29, Communication number 2023-436. Commissioner Reardon.
Thank you, Chairman, or Chief Executive Gallagher. I would like to segregate number 2023-427, please.
That's item 20, Communication number 2023-427.
Correct. Thank you.
Are there any other friendly amendments and or segregations? Seeing none, I'll take a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to approve Section 2 of the consent agenda, A, 1 through 4, and B, 1 through 29, with the exceptions of 20, Communication 2023-427, 28, Communication 2023-435, 29, Communication 2023-436.
We have a motion and a second to approve tonight's consent agenda. Is there anything on the question? Can commissioners? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay. 12 yeas, 0 nay. Motion passes. Moving on to communication number 2023-427. J.P. Gallagher, Chief Executive, requesting Council of Commissioners concurrence with the Property Demolition Grant Committee's recommendation to approve up to $5,061.60 for the demolition of 115 Academy Street in Walkerville, Montana. Commissioner Reardon.
Thank you. I just segregated this for the fact that basically I'm glad to see the hard work that both the executive branch and the council's done to provide this funding for the urban blight that we've been suffering in certain areas. I believe this is the first, not the first house that has been demoed, but basically where these funds have been used. So I just wanted to make it evident that I appreciate the work that the council has done and the executive branch to make this happen. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Commissioner Reardon.
All right, I would like to make a motion that communication number 2023-427 concur and place on file.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to concur and place on file communication number 2023-427. Is there anything on the question? Could And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay. Motion passes. Motion passes. Moving on to item number 28, communication number 2023-435. Karen Burns, Community Development Director, requesting Council of Commissioners authorization for Butte-Silver Bow to submit an application to the Butte Department of Commerce for renovation project at the Aspen Apartments located at 4500 Continental Drive, Butte, Montana for window and siding replacement. Director Burns, are you up here? And so that would be Commissioner Frederickson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Director Burns asked me to segregate this so she can come up and speak to it.
Thank you. Welcome, Director Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, Commissioner Frederickson. I'm Karen Burns, Director of Community Development. Thank you for entertaining the segregation of this communication tonight. I just wanted to clarify, last week there was a public hearing scheduled that was not published correctly, so I apologize for not being here to address that. I was out of the office. But I just wanted to make sure that we're checking the boxes to ensure that we're able to apply for these funds from the Community Development Block Grant Program at the Department of Commerce at the state. We're working towards that. As you see, we had one public comment tonight from the developer and owner of the, administrator of the Aspen Apartments. This is a really good project, and it does ensure affordable housing stays affordable at this complex and does stay within housing guidelines of livability by the siding and window replacement. So I just wanted to briefly talk about that. We are working diligently to get this application in on time, and there'll be more to come from us on these kinds of projects and grant applications in the future. So thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have about this process if there is any.
Thank you, Director Burns. Any questions from commissioners? Seeing none, Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Thank you, Director Burns. At this point, I'll move to concur and place communication 2023-435 on file.
We have a motion and a second to place communication number 2023-435 to concur and place on file. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to item number 29, communication number 2023-436. Jim Fisher, Commissioner District 6, requesting a resolution to be considered for expressing the policy of Butte-Silver Bowl regarding the consent decree, commitments, communication, and public transparency. Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I know where to start here, but I want to start where you started earlier tonight. And you read some quotes from some coaches and stuff. Well, apparently you're talking about your position, and we're in the same position. We're elected officials.
It was for all of us.
Thank you. If I could continue, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. So anyhow, this communication, as you read it, is a draft resolution to be considered for discussion and passage, expressing the policy of Butte-Silver regarding consent decree commitments, communications, and public transparency. That's where we're at. And the thing about it is here, you have a lot of concern about who wrote the letter. I think Evan Barrett said it well. Doesn't matter who wrote the letter. It's my communication. I hold it. I've got a lot of people to thank for this. It wasn't just me. This was a joint effort by a lot of people in the community to get to this point. And the reason for this resolution the way it is to be considered is this resolution is an action item. And every action causes a reaction. And we're getting a lot of reaction before we even had any talk about the action. So it kind of saddens me that we have people here already picking apart a resolution that we haven't even had a thorough discussion about. And if anyone reads through this, I agree there's a few things in there, but as any resolution that's been through the council since I've been here 10 years, you get a red line, you review it, you discuss it. We don't sit here and throw mud at each other and try to get things, fixed that way. This is a viable document that needs to be considered by our community. And because of that, it states right in there, scientific data should far outweigh the cost and the expense of what EPA and ARCO may want to spend to fix some of our issues. Dirty dirt, gray dirt, it shouldn't be acceptable. I mean, and if that's in the consent decree, as Mr. Griffin said, that's something that we all missed. And I don't know if anybody at this table up here, even you, JP,
have read the consent decree, 1,300 pages, 26 or 29 appendixes, and I don't know if anyone's read it. We took and bought that. I voted against it. Bill Anderson joined me voting against it. And at this time, now we're wondering about the consent decree. We haven't moved a shovel full of dirt. We signed that thing 2.5, 3 years ago. All we're trying to do here is open the lines of communication and get a reaction from not the chief executive, worrying about who wrote the letter, what's going on, not about that. We want to get a reaction from ARCO, BP, DEQ, and realize that Butte-Silver commissioners want to know what's going on. Well, when are we going to get this fixed? I mean, it's 40 years. I mean, I've been on the commission 10 years. I've been knocking on this door for a long time. My good friend Fritz Daly, Chris Fisk, you know, Eric Nyland, people on this commission. This finally's come to a point where we've got to discuss this out a little bit and decide. And I do agree that, you know, they report to the chief executive, not the council. But if you read through these things, there's a lot of things here that got to be considered. And, you know, one of the words in here, and, you know, it kind of goes with that song, It's Hard to Be Humble, which is a voluminous document, you know. Well, hell, it is. I'm telling you. I bet the county attorney couldn't even decide what was in that. And I'm not being sarcastic to anyone, but at the time we done the consent decree, there were 7 high-paid attorneys, 7 or 8 EPA lawyers, 7 or 8 ARCO EP lawyers. And I love Molly Maffei. Molly had her hands full. John Cecil had his hands full. We were outweighed at the table. And it's time now for this commission to take a look at this resolution, discuss it, redline it where needed, and let's not make no rash decisions. Let's consider this and move on. And if anyone has any comments to make tonight, even from the audience, I appreciate hearing them. But at the end of this, I'm going to make a motion to move it to committee of the whole. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to move it to the committee of the whole. I'd like to speak to just a couple things here, and I just want to, I guess this is an opportunity with it being segregated to talk about a couple of things that were of concern to me, because as we talk about transparency and talking through things, and I think that, you know, probably more than anything, some of it caught the chief executive's office, my administrative office, off guard, because there was no discussion about this letter coming forward, about what was there, and talk through some of the things that we could have agreement on and know the things that have been done. And I just want to address some of those points that are in here, and that's my point tonight. Deviations from consent decree, there are provisions within that we can account for any deviations into there, whether it's a minor or major change, and whether the minor change can be agreed to by the parties, or if it's a major, is a reopener of the consent decree. Those are in there. Haul Road removal. We are in negotiations. We have involved the commissioners. I know Commissioner Sorich has been in it. Commissioner Mankins has been invited and been at meetings with that. Commissioner O'Neill, he's had conflicts and has not been able to be at that. And Commissioner Callahan has been invited to talk about proposed new haul road where the tailings can be taken to. And so we are working through that in the things that are in there. So these are things that could have been addressed and not even brought into topic there. You know, we're no longer bound by the EPA confidentiality agreement. There's some truth to that, but it's not total truth. The things within the CD are still bound by the confidentiality agreement, so that all things are still not open. And they're not. And you can shake your head. It's a federal court order. It would take a federal court order to reopen some of those things that are within that. So that is truth. No employee official with a position funded in whole by BP ARCO may commit a decision on behalf of the community. We have people that are funded by Butte-Silver Bowl that are making those decisions every day when we're talking about the RMAP program, when we're doing all kinds of different programs. They're making those decisions. Butte-Silver Bowl does not sanction a delegation of citizens' rights under the EPA. I think this goes to the CTEC deal, and you know, I have and supported Evan Barrett's letter that I got DEQ and NRD involved in when we talk about Montana Constitution and open meeting laws. We have a letter to the EPA asking them to open up those meetings. Number 7 was probably the one that I think was hardest for all of our employees in the Superfund department. And I just want to kind of speak to that. It says, no employee or official of Butte-Silver Bowl will engage in public relations activities on behalf of any entity regarding Superfund issues are hereby reminded that their obligation as citizens of Butte. People within our Superfund department run the bibsu.com, run PitWatch. Those are all public relations things that are done every single day. The employees with conflicts will turn, and this was kind of addressed, will report to you. We have a code of ethics that all employees of Butte-Silver Bow, so to segregate one department exclusively differently than other departments, we could open ourselves up for lawsuits on that, holding them to a different standard than other people. And so those were the issues that I'm talking about, and that's why I was asking, hey, where did this come from? Why didn't we sit down and why didn't we talk about these things ahead of time? Because our employees raise families, they live in this community, and there's language in here that is, very direct at some of our employees that work in Superfund division and myself that kind of says that we're doing things that are against the community. And we can agree to disagree, and politics is so jaded these days, and that's the last thing we want to do. I can walk out of here and still be friends with the people that I disagree with in here, and that's the way we got to do those things. But I want to address the issues in here that really have problems with this. And I had issues when nobody could answer that anybody authored this at all. We had a lot of people dance and say it was different things. And I know one of the things that was in here was about an article that was written by an employee of Butte-Silver Bow and didn't get it authorized by somebody. And so those are things that we are addressing and we're working through. So I just want to assure everybody, as I look at this, our employees are working extremely hard and care about this community as much as anybody. And the last thing that we're going to do, and I've stated this over and over again, it needs to be protective of human health and the environment, and we're not going to settle for anything less. But I know that some people say that there's complete cleanups that have happened in our community. There is no absolute cleanup that's happened there. But if we can show protectiveness and things can go on and there's things that we can agree to, then I'm not saying no to everything until we know what that is. And so that's my position, and that's what I wanted to state tonight. So is there any, Commissioner Fisher?
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. As I stated, we want to open this up for conversation. Your negativity at this time from this resolution being proposed is stunning to me. You're already opposing it before we even discuss it. You're already telling us where everything's wrong with this. What's right with this thing? Do you have any opposition to what's saying this might be right in this thing? All we're asking as commissioners should be a little more involved. We are elected officials. I have no problem with the RMAP program. I have no problem with a lot of things going on. But damn it, we need some input here in this council, and we've never got it. We've never had it. And another thing I'll remind you, you and I have met many a times in your office on different subjects, and if you wanted to contact me and visit about it, you should have. And as far as the letter being written, you sent me an email and said you didn't get the letter. My computer was down, which they are a lot of times in this operation for some reason. But if you want to know who wrote the letter, I'll take credit for it, with a lot of help from a lot of legal minds and a lot of other people. Just as when years ago, Eileen can justify this, I had 6 powerful attorneys meet with her when we wanted to change the government. They all work pro bono. So I can get people to work for us too. And if this gets to a real dogfight in the end, I don't want it to get that way. But I'm going to tell you what, this resolution stands on its own, and the content of this resolution is solid. And I do agree, I have no problem with the county employees. Let's not make no mistake, MRI has nothing to do with MRI. The current operations. This has to do with the smelting problems and the dirty dirt that they want to put in here and stuff like that. We as commissioners should have a little bit to say about that, and we have not been informed. And as Mr. Cambridge can say, I showed him in a book last week where it said J.P. Gallagher spent some money at Safeway and said meeting with EPA, DEQ, and BP. And the same sentence, you told me we're not having no meetings. Is that correct or not correct? That's correct. Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher, I'll address that. I did not say we weren't having any meetings. I said that we didn't have any public meetings on that. We met with them. There was nothing discussed that we're moving forward to that it was a public meeting. There are multiple meetings, and one of the things that, we are elected officials that are elected to be representative. We need to be able to be able to meet with people at certain times. Now, when it is anything to do with the consent decree and where it's going to go, I can tell you when we did that, it's like any other time that you have people in and they're talking about that. Casey Becker was in and met with many other people during that same time. That again, those meetings were the same as all of them. That meeting happened because people were in town, and we talked about public relations. That's where the discussion and where we worked with Evan Bear towards that. And I will say this: you said that you didn't say that you didn't know who did it. Your email directly says, "I did not submit that letter." It directly says it, and I sent it to you, and I was asking other people about that, and you said I didn't do that. So to speak to that and point a finger back at me, again, it's not accusatory to anybody. I would like to have a conversation. If people have concerns, I'd like to have a conversation about that. But in the same sense, as we move along here, to think that anything is being done behind closed doors, I went down to Denver to have a meeting with the principals to find out who works for all these agencies, because more than 70% of the staff for all of these agencies have turned over since the consent decree. Nobody even knew each other. COVID shut everything down. Nobody knew the difference of those people. The reason we ended up in Denver is because I found out DEQ was meeting with the EPA down in Denver. It was the only time I could get people together so we could find out who the heck the people were in that. Again, it's to get this organized back. And I think that there's this perception that something's being done behind closed doors, and that's absolutely not the truth. And again, this is not against you, Commissioner Fisher. You and I have disagreed on things before. I have nothing personally against you on this, but I do think I need to speak up on things when we're talking about our staff and how things move forward. And I can assure you, we represent our community well in every single meeting that goes on there. But every single meeting that we have with all the different agencies, if we're going to make that a publicly noticed meeting that is going to have minutes and everything done at it and televised and videotaped, we're not going to have very many meetings. And we talk about the slow pace of what's happening here. That will slow things down tremendously. But if that's the direction that we're going to go. But I can tell you that what this resolution does do, the only one that this holds accountable to is Butte-Silver Bow. All of the things in here, this resolution only is limiting to Butte-Silver Bow. There's nothing that holds EPA accountable. There's nothing that holds AR accountable. There's nothing that holds DEQ or NRD accountable through this resolution. That's just my take on this. So I just wanted to state those facts as well. Commissioner Sorich.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. You know, there are some good talking points in this resolution. I don't agree with it all. You know, when we had the consent decree, we spent hours and hours and hours and hours of public hearings. Some nights it was past midnight. Sometimes it was 1 a.m. Sometimes some of the commissioners fell asleep. Sometimes we were doing it all on. We had a lot of good experts, which I conclude Joe Griffin is probably being the top. Joe knows his stuff. He's on both sides of. We had a lot of good input from a lot of the different professionals around town that have committed their lives. An expert, a person who was comprehensive in a third of knowledge or skill of a particular area. We had a lot of those people that made comment and said we were good. We had good input and we had some. A lot of input. We listened to a lot of it. We made the best decision we can. I thought by listening, and it was a big document. Almost impossible to read through the whole thing and comprehend it, yes. So there are some good talking points. There are some, I think it's good we should listen to it and discuss it. As far as the transparency deal, I am a little bit offended. You know, there seems to be a handful of commissioners in this room that knew what was going on. The rest of us are left in the dark. How is that transparent? It isn't.
Thank you, Commissioner Sorich. Commissioner Frederickson, and then we'll go to Commissioner Fisher and Commissioner Reardon.
I was just going to call for the vote. I think that we should, not to end the conversation, but I think that we have a motion to continue this discussion next week at the Committee of the Whole. That was a recommendation that I placed on the agenda. So yeah, I'm going to call for the vote, not I think we're kind of going in circles here. Let's sit on it a week. Everyone's given their piece, and let's try to come up with something, a useful document. I agree with Mr. Barrett. This isn't supposed to, there's been 40 years of employees at Butte-Silver Bow, and I'm sure all of them are great employees, but this isn't a document to talk about employees past or current. This is a guiding document for future to gain a little bit of trust, like Mr. McGee said. So I'm going to call for the vote.
We have a call for the vote. So with that, we have other commissioners that want to speak to this. County Attorney, do we continue the conversation or do we vote? It was called for the vote. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I thought we had, so I just want to make sure. Okay. Okay. So we have a call for the vote. So you're voting on to refer to the committee of the whole. We're voting on a call for the vote and then back to the original motion. Gotcha. So this is a call for the vote. Okay. So what we're doing now is it's a call for the vote. Could commissioners please vote? I think that's the first time I've had it. It's to decide whether you're going to vote to go back to the original motion. Yeah, the motion was a call for the vote. It was seconded, so now we're voting on calling for the vote, and then we'll go back to the original motion. Is that correct? Commissioner Walker, I don't think yours is registered yet. There we go. Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
8 yea, 4 nay.
8 yea, 4 nay. Motion passes for the call for the vote. Now we'll go back to the original motion, which is to refer to the committee of the whole. Am I correct? Okay. Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Okay, moving on to Section 3, ordinances and resolutions introduced to judiciary. We have 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, I believe. Please note those. Moving on to Section 4, ordinances and resolutions for final reading. We have 4 of those tonight. We'll start with resolution number 2023-26. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution approving a tax benefit for new industry in the city county of Butte-Silver Bow by Senate, all in accordance with the provisions of section 15-24-1402 MCA, providing an effective date herein.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Resolution 2023-26 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second place on resolution number 2023-26 on final reading. On the question. Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay. 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay. Motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2023-27. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution of necessity declaring an additional infrastructure deficient area exists within the city and county of Butte-Silver Bow, Montana, Butte-Silver Bow, and that an investment of infrastructure in that area is in an interest of public health, safety, morals, or welfare of the residents of Butte-Silver Bow.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Resolution 2023-27 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second placing resolution number 2023-27 on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Commissioners, please vote. Commissioner, okay. And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay. Motion passes. Motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2023-28. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution finding additional blighted areas exist within the city and county of Butte-Silver, Montana, Butte-Silver, and that rehabilitation, redevelopment, or a combination therewith of such areas is necessary in the interest of public health, safety, morals, or welfare of the residents of Butte-Silver.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Resolution 2023-28 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second placing resolution number 2020 on final reading. Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay. Motion passes. Moving on to resolution number 2023-29. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution of necessity declaring infrastructure deficient area exists in the city and county of Butte-Silver, Montana, Butte-Silver, and that an investment in infrastructure in the area known as Montana Connections Business Development Park is necessary, and that the interest of the public health, safety, or welfare of residents of the city and county of Butte-Silver, state of Montana.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Resolution number 2023-29 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second placing resolution number 2023-29 on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay. Motion passes. Moving on to the calendar and other events, please note the dates of meetings and times and committees. Next, we'll move on to any public comment on any item not addressed on tonight's agenda. And this is your time. Mr. Barrett, thank you for your patience.
Mr. Chief Executive, thank you for the education about your agenda. Thank you all. Yeah, you're just getting ready to adopt a budget. And as you do that, there's going to be a lot going on, and I watch it in the news every day. There's going to be some real problems with property taxes as they're allocated in Butte-Silver. And it is not your fault, but there are people at the state level, the governor and representatives of the legislature, who are blaming local government for the increases in homeowner taxes. Let me give you very quickly some salient points from the Department of Revenue about property taxes in Butte-Silver. There's going to be overall, the homeowners in Butte-Silver will have a permanent tax increase of $7.2 million a year starting this year. Basically a 30% jump from 24.3 million to 31.5 million. And that's permanently, unless they change the law. Commercial is going to go up. It's basically an average of 30% jump in residential property taxes in Butte-Silver. Some above it, some below it. 7% for commercial. That's your class 4. While that's happening, the way they've done it to you and to the homeowners is they've arranged for a night's shift of taxes. So while your taxes are going up, permanent tax cuts are made in Butte-Silver for airlines and railroads at 16% cut, data centers a 14% cut, telecommunications and electrical generation a 13% cut, and pipelines a 12% cut. They're doing that by not doing what the Department of Revenue told them to do. At the beginning of this legislature, before it happened, the Department of Revenue told them when an iron law of property taxes is if reappraisals go way up, you got to reduce the rates to negate the impact, which every previous legislature has done when confronted with this problem. These guys did not do it. They were told to reduce it from 1.35% to 0.94%. They didn't do it. And their 101 mills are at full bore. Now you guys are forced, because of this high appraisal, you're forced to lower your mills by 100. And when you lower the mills by 100, you're not just lowering them for homeowners, you're lowering them for every tax classification. So the biggest industries in Butte and the biggest property taxpayers in Butte are getting a big tax, and there's a tax shift, a huge tax shift. The share of Butte homeowners' share of property taxes is increasing from 36% for homeowners to 45% in 1 year. That's a 25% increase in what homeowners are paying. If you don't mind, if I have a couple of more things I'd like. But anyway, let me just say that they were told at the legislature what to do. They didn't do it. And then when we discovered these numbers, we had to dig them out from the Department of Revenue. They were requested to hold a special session and fix it. One day, one bill, three word changes. That's all it takes. They didn't do it. So let me just conclude by saying you're being blamed by the people that put it on you, not just once, and put it on the homeowners, but twice. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Next, we'll move on to adjourning the meeting. I'll take a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signal by aye. Opposed?